One. Welcome back to another episode of Spiritual Teachers Podcast. With me today is Christina Zupke. Christina is a consciousness accelerator, a lightning rod of downloads and insight, and a contact experiencer, as well as so much more. It's such an honor to have you on today. Welcome on, Christina.
Hey, thanks for having me, Peter. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited. We're going to talk about the ET agenda of today, advanced technologies, inner earth, the light body, and Christina's experiences with her first teachers. We're going to talk about Sasquatch. We're going to talk about PTSD and removing it from the nervous system. And we might do a second episode depending on how things flow, but I have a feeling that would be in the flow today. So, Christina, I would love to invite you to share how the awakening journey started for you.
Yeah, so, I think that I was pretty normal. I was, dysfunctional family, all that stuff. I knew that there was more to life than what was right in front of me. I remember I was 5, and my mom's side of the family is a conservative farmer family, and coming from Eastern Ohio, very small town Amish country.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, so I remember sitting in church actually and realizing at 5 that even though everybody here wants to know God, no one knows God. None of them know. And that was a really profound realization, because, up until then, I was taking this all in as authority. And then I realized, wait a minute, this is the blind leading the blind.
Right.
People. So deep inside me, there's some sort of permission that happened that I can't put words to or describe beyond what I've said, but it definitely was influential moving forward. When I was a teenager, I knew the mystical was a thing. When I was 12, I wanted to be a nun because I knew that I love creation and I love the universe. And being a nun was the only holy path for a woman that I knew about, So, and of course, my family thought that was ridiculous. Everybody laughed me out of the living room. And what's interesting is the reasons that they had on why I could never be a nun, and it was really around, I'm to this and I'm to that. And it was just kind of like a big shame program dump.
Right.
And that actually really hurt. It hurt that was their true opinion, And then later on, fast forward many more years, I was a teenager and I discovered yoga and meditation. And this was in Ohio. So it was a really conservative place. But this woman that was born from the area, she became a world traveler and ended up living in an ashram for about 20 years.
Wow.
And she had a guru, the whole thing. And then she moved back home to be close to her mom and started teaching yoga. So it was the spiritual yoga. We did full body prayer is what she taught us.
I love it.
Yeah. So mantras and meditation and the asanas, they all work together for full body experience. And I realized in retrospect, that was really, really important for me to get exposed to because it activated me on so many levels. And eventually I ended up meeting her guru, who was a fallen guru at the time. And he levitated and did all these things.
Oh, wow.
Right. So I got exposed to this whole mystical side of humanity. And he was a fallen guru. So he was also, kind of like unseated from the pedestal. So
Well,
it was really
so fallen just means like that he wasn't considering himself a guru anymore?
No, I'll explain that. So, but to finish that one sentence is like he had all these mystical abilities and was very humanized. So when I say fallen guru, he was in charge of the ashram, and it was revealed. And everybody in the ashram, there's like a hierarchy in an ashram. There's like the renunciates. There's all these. It's something like this. And all the renunciates and the people who were residential there were celibate unless they were married. And then what was revealed was that he was having sex with lots of his disciples.
Okay.
And so when I say fallen guru, like the whole community fell apart, got rocked by this revelation.
Mm,
And yet he's still a profound human,
right.
right?
Right.
Things. So I was exposed to the hypocrisy and the just, the guru program, how I really wasn't on board with it at all. I can
Mm,
definitely be with him and honor the fact that he's this amazing human being, and I am having these amazing experiences being in his presence, but also understanding that he's a very human man.
right.
You know?
Right.
And that really set the stage for the rest of my awakening journey. I got married and had kids, and I had the honor of staying home with my kids when they were young. And I started getting activated. These star beings were coming to me, and I would go into these altered states for many, many hours at a time when I was pregnant, and then after they were born.
Wow.
And I knew that my first child was a primary. She's many things, as we all are, but they were doing specific work to reactivate her Palladian DNA,
Oh,
her
okay.
Palladian connections. And then then her sister, the next pregnancy, it was the Arcturians and Syrians that were coming. So I had to be alone. I would never be able to work a regular life. You know what I mean? Do that kind of thing and have those be available for that stuff. So I think that's why the universe orchestrated that. So I would go into altered states for many hours at a time, and
Wow.
the kids were born and all this stuff. And, life unfolded. And then these dreams were happening. I was getting approached by these beings that I couldn't make sense out of. I definitely was approached multiple times by reptilian beings and other beings of non-human consciousness, we can call. And some of them are really scary, some of them are really opening, a lot of mantis experiences.
Mm,
And combined with that, the government stuff started getting in there too. And I realized way later that, it was kind of like recon, in the sense of I was going in and out of these realms where humans aren't supposed to be going in and out of. And I was like getting interrogated, so to speak, by certain presences within the SSP program. They
like,
wanted
what are
to,
you doing here, kind of, right?
or well, what would they tell you? What would they show you? What they activate? This.
Okay. So
And
would you say in those experiences you were like astral projecting into these places?
all right, so there's this concept about astral projection, right? So I understand why those words are used. I was altered. So our biosuit, and this is part of what makes the light body teaching so juxtaposed to the mystery schools that have been proliferated through Western consciousness, especially. The biosuit, our bodies are hyperdimensional,
Hmm.
and we have access to the entire cosmos inside of our body.
Hmm.
So what would happen is that so much of my consciousness would be aware of a different frequency that's not, you know what I mean? That's not normally occupied by my awareness. And that's where people talk about astral projection and out of body experiences. Because the experience is like, you're not in your body, you're out there, but
Right.
really you're in a frequency,
Right.
right? So zones of frequency create those kinds of experiences. So yeah, I would be taken on ships. I'd be shown all kinds of things. I mean, there was a lot there. And then, I was getting a lesson about we're not who we think we are, and reality is not what we think it is. And this is, decades and decades of digestion that you're hearing me say it now. But at the time, it was really confusing and scary. And I had a lot of suppressed memories that came forward that was a major part of the awakening, and different immortal masters would introduce themselves to me, and then other beings would start to come forward. And the very interesting thing is that I was mean, I was crass, I was not nice to a lot of these beings. I was like, what the,
Oh, wow. Okay.
I had major attitude.
Uh-huh.
But later on, what they showed me was like, that was exactly right, because there was no way in hell I was ever going to acquiesce to any being, no matter how they presented themselves. So
Mm,
that actually allowed me to go much further than normally is allowed. Because when we were trained to worship and glorify, this is a major program that was downloaded right after the fall of consciousness, the great catastrophe that's in our history. We were reinformed and taught by different beings. We call them Nephilim and other beings, other names. And we were taught to worship and glorify.
Like the
And
Anunnaki, right?
yeah, Anunnaki teachings. Also demigod, the demiurge being reimplanted, reinserted, all these things. And in order to be in alignment with divine, we had to worship and glorify whomever, right? And that, quite frankly, that program was broken in me.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about that is that's the big thing that gets in the way of most spiritual seekers is this inner program to worship and glorify and venerate,
Mm.
right? And
Pedestal, right?
yeah, it's not, not just the pedestal, but that's definitely a part of the dynamic, right? You meet someone who has really great stories, and now you think that they know more than you because of
Mm.
this, and that totally disconnects you from your own source, your own purpose, your own divinity,
Right.
right? Because you think there's that comparison game. So because I was like that, I'm still kind of like that, depending on the situation. I was taken to different places and shown all these teachings, and they were dismantling a lot of the blind spots, and they were preparing me for the path of, what I'm on now, as far as the vision I'm unfolding. And this idea is that the realms need to be reunited. People are talking about reality splits. It's like that is just one little tiny bubble of illusion, right? So, but what's happening is that we're in many, 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 many bubbles of illusion.
Mm-hmm.
And the reuniting of the realms clears the air. Uniting of the realms, I'm talking about a hyperdimensional space where all beings can meet and have counsel. All beings can work together for a vision. When I say all beings, I mean nature spirits, the fae, the Sasquatch, the tree beings, the mountain beings, the earth herself, the Pachamama, right? And the indigenous, some of my indigenous teachers, they really accentuated the fact that we are in a realm. We are in the realm of the mother. And that's literally what the word Pachamama means, realm of the mother. So this idea of being on a planet, this idea of being on a flat earth, this idea, all these things, they all overlap. How do you take this all in and have it all be the truth at once?
Mm.
That's the secret to getting out of these programs, these illusion programs, is it's not an either or. What's the and? What is
Well,
it?
yeah, isn't it? Would you agree that it's because the beliefs that different individuals have create a paradigm of reality? And so, like, let's use the flat Earth as an example, right? Like, there's flat earthers and sphere earthers, right? So, flat earthers believe that a lot of them believe that there's an ice wall around the flat Earth, and some of them believe that there's like
Mhm.
a bubble of energy around that flat Earth, and that we're kind of blocked in from going to explore the rest of this reality, right? And then you have what we learned in school, that the Earth is a sphere and we're traveling through space, and so you're saying that taking both of those and making them both true, would you say it's because there is the belief of different people that are creating these realities?
Yeah. So all right. Well, it's interesting how they're taking us into the very deep dive here.
Yeah, that's usually what happens.
All right. So you're familiar with the term fourth dimension, the 4D field.
Yeah.
Okay. So the 4D field is time, linear time specifically, but it's also collective conscious. So we have grids. You've heard of consciousness grids.
Hmm.
We have collective agreements. We have consensus. We have all these different things in that 4D field that tell us how we're going to experience our reality. So yes, beliefs have a major role in that, but it's more. It's way more than that. And here you can actually change the nature of things with consensus. And here's a story to illustrate what I mean. So we can all agree, most people listening and you probably agree, the fire, when you burn, it's hot.
Yeah.
Right? Heat rises, the ashes go down, and this is the gateway to getting to know fire.
Yeah.
All right. So what happens when you're with a collective of people who are all on the same page, multidimensional in their awareness, right? And they see that fire and they sing and tune themselves into the fire. They frequency match the fire, and they all agree when it reaches that critical mass, that fire is no longer hot. That fire will no longer burn. Okay. We've done these ceremonies every new and full moon for well over a decade, doing this exact practice. And it works. You can put tissue paper in that fire and it will not burn.
Wow.
Okay. So that's the power of consensus. We can change the nature of whatever it is that's in front of us with that consensus.
Okay. And the question that arises from there is, is there a certain amount of people or beings that need to believe this? Is it 3 or more, 12 or more? Have you found a number?
Right. The critical mass.
Right.
Right. The critical mass. So I do get guidance around the critical mass. I also, this is going to go against what a lot of people are experiencing right now, but I'm getting told that we've reached the critical mass. Now it's just, all of the sand, so to speak, is just everybody settling into their frequency matches, and some people have to have their lives explode, and other people, it's like, oh, just a graceful little hop
Uh-huh.
to the next timeline over or whatever. And timelines are part of that 4D field. This is how we get manipulated, right? Making decisions based on lies. We make choices and we start creating these false timelines because we're totally responding to an illusion, So we're waking up to the truth. Depending on what your relationship is to that, it could be scathing, it could be graceful. We're at a very interesting point because we need to come together, and we're more divided than ever before. I think a lot of people would agree with that idea, that when you look at, like, say, our side of the world, there's so much division. And yet somehow, somewhere, on some level, we're even more united.
Mm-hmm.
So then you start to bring in the question, well, what's real? Is it either or? Is it both? You see what I mean? And
Yeah.
when you hold these ideas in your awareness as both being true, that forces you to look at assumptions, to flush out beliefs that tell you one is more than the other, one is more real than the other. You know what I mean? So it liberates you. It just really challenges us because there's so many people that are willing to die on a hill that they truly believe is real.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. So I just wanted to follow up on the last question. So when you've been doing these ceremonies with the fire, what have you found is the minimum amount of people that need to be believing this to make the fire not burn a piece of tissue?
If I'm by myself, I can do it by myself. The ceremonies that we did every year or every couple of weeks with the new and full moon, I was just me and one other person.
Okay.
Sometimes we invited others in.
Okay.
There are, when we would get with our larger spiritual community, there would be up to 50 or more
Okay.
people.
Okay. So there isn't really, it's just the belief needs to be strong enough, it sounds like, for it to shift the frequency.
Okay. No. Yes and no. And what I want to say, reason why I want to say no to that, everybody needs to hear this. This is not about how strong or how resolved you are in your belief.
Okay.
Something to happen. That's not what's really happening. And then this is important to put our finger on, because a lot of people get very self-critical, down on themselves, because, they feel like they weren't strong enough. They weren't focused enough. They weren't that enough. You know what I mean? Some not
right.
enough, right? It's really about understanding how to work the 4D field so you can have the freedom and the space to truly go with what's right for you, what's truth for you. So here's the example. The Celtic culture has a lot of truth woven into their myths. Their myths, they seem like they're these surface stories or these songs, but when you really take them in, they go deep. So the 4D field is really, really powerful. And we are all exposed to what it is to walk into a hyperdimensional space. Just think about the last time you walked into a space that everybody accepted as being a sacred space. Right? It could be a temple, it could be a master built church, it could be a vortex area, right?
Yeah.
So what happens is that we our reality is all nested inside of each other, like those Russian nesting dolls. You've heard
Right. The matryoshkas.
exactly,
Uh-huh.
exactly. And one informs the other one, and
Okay.
they all collectively create a frequency, a song that gives us our experience in the very middle. So the 4D field is so inundated and overlaid. It's a lot clearer than it used to be, but it's so inundated and overlaid. It's just not a matter of making a bubble where you can exist. It's a matter of making a bubble that is qualified in a certain way so it can hold and support the consciousness of the next bubble within it, which is even closer to your sacredness and your divinity and the truth of who you really are. And then that situates, and then that holds space for the bubble that is actually you, your sovereign being, doing things in that center,
Mm.
from that place.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not about being strong enough or not. It's just understanding that this 4D field is really, really potent.
Yeah.
And most of us, actually, I'm going to say without exception, are seduced by it in many ways. Okay. Think about any time you knew you were right about something and you're willing to fight for it. Enough said.
Right. Right.
That's a program. So when we do ceremonies like that, the fire ceremony, it's a sacred space inside sacred space inside sacred space. And then we have the freedom to have our consensus.
Okay. Okay. What the next question that arises is like, how, since it's not, it doesn't sound like when you were reaching these other dimensions and going into these spaces and interacting with these beings, was the Merkaba involved in any way?
So the Merkaba, that has been such a plane of conflict for me, because so many teachers that I so respected were very much into the Merkaba, and there's something in me is like, no, absolutely not. And it took me a long time to understand why. So remember, there's no right or going back to when you're navigating the 4D field, liberating yourself from the idea of anything being right or wrong is essential.
Right.
Okay. So I was really torn and confused because there's these teachers that I really felt a lot of resonance with and a lot of transmissions from, but then they would pull out the Merkaba thing and I'd be like instantly turned off. And I'm like, God, what's wrong with me? I mean, I spent most of my journey thinking there was something wrong with me. I'm to this, I'm not enough that, whatever. There was, the endless list of what's wrong with me. And then I saw this graphic done by this Dutch guy who later I found out was a contact experiencer. But and what he did, what he talked about was the diamond. And this is, if you take, so the Merkaba is two, three pointed or three, so triangles, right? You have your triangles. There's different ways triangles can manifest in the 3D form. In the Merkaba, it's 3 points. The triangle has 3 points as its base. And there's two of them together that connect and they spin in particular directions.
Right.
And depending on what kind of spin you have is depending on what kind of universe reality you're accessing. Okay. And then there's a whole argument about should they be spinning the same way? Should one be going counterclockwise? You know what I mean? There's a lot of conflicting information about that, right? Both all those different narratives are being propagated by many teachers that are, really masterful in what they do. So
Yeah.
it's like, now what do you do with that? Right. So that's my question to myself.
Right. Right.
And then this diamond teaching came in and it was a graphic. It was like a GIF.
Right.
And I looked at that and that just activated me. I was like, holy crap, that's it. And so this is 4 pyramids with the base of 4 connecting together to create a diamond. That's my travel body.
Okay. Interesting.
Major liberation when I discovered that and accepted that, right?
Right.
Because it went against everything I was told by, well, pretty much everybody.
Right. Okay. Okay. Well, it's really interesting. And I'm still like learning why spirit guided me to get the Merkaba tattooed on my arm.
Mhm.
And it was, at first I wanted to get the galactic butterfly. which is the Mayan symbol. It's kind of like a yin yang.
Oh, I know that. Yes.
Yeah,
I can
yeah,
see it. You say it. Yeah.
yeah. There's another name for it, but that was what I was gonna get originally, and then Spirit was like, get the Merkaba with a solar eclipse behind it.
Okay.
And so I've been on this journey to really understand the Merkaba and to really work with it. And I haven't had any like real experiences with it. I haven't been able to like see it in my mind's eye. I've done meditations, but very, very light exposure to it in my practice. And so, yeah, so that's part of it. And then from there, Melchizedek,
Yeah. I've
I
worked
think
with
I'm
him.
saying his first name wrong.
John
John
Below.
Velo, yeah. What are your thoughts on his teachings and what he brought? Because he talked about, the flower of life. He talked about the
Yeah.
Merkaba. Yeah. What do you feel about his teachings?
Yeah. So I was around for when those teachings first came about, the flower of life
Okay.
teachings, what you're talking about. And that was the thing that started the conflict for me. Was I had many friends that see, when you sit with him and when you talk to him, it's a different experience than reading things in a book, right?
Oh,
So
I'm sure. Yeah.
so I mean, there's transmissions in the book, and those books came with like, I can't even remember how many VHS tapes. You remember
Mm,
VHS, but you don't, or so VHS
yeah.
tapes.
I remember him. Yeah.
It was like like volumes and volumes
Oh,
of
wow.
hours and hours and hours of videos that accompanied the original Flower of Life teachings. And he would, he was, well, walk-in pretty much, that you can see the shift in his consciousness. He would, the walk-in energy would come in and he would dispense the teachings, all this stuff.
And then it would leave.
He would shift. Yeah, I
Oh,
would
okay.
call it a
Okay.
shift. Some might call it leaving. You could, but so here's the thing. During that time, so you had to really, really work hard with your spiritual practice because things were so dense back then. You
Oh,
know,
for sure.
yeah, I'm talking about, late 90s, early 2000s, things were really dense. And we
Yeah.
were all preparing for 2012, what's going to happen in 2012,
Oh, yeah.
right? There's a lot of that going on. And so two of my dear friends were devout drum below practitioners / followers, right?
Mhm.
I respected them a lot, and it drove them nuts that I was not super validating to the things with the drum below. And I'm
Uh-huh.
like, hey, there's nothing wrong with him. I think he's great. I mean, I've actually done trainings with him, since then. I mean, it's it's not that I don't like him or anything like that. It's just there's certain things that were rubbing me the wrong way. And
Uh-huh.
I'm snarky and I have an attitude, and that's just how it's going to go. I'm not going to pretend that it does, right? That it is going to work.
Uh-huh.
So that was like, if we ever wanted to really get into it over dinner, someone would bring that kind of thing up.
Right.
So in the beginning, he spoke specifically about the Flower of Life teachings as they are now versus the Awakened Heart teachings. Or I'm sorry, the Flower of Life teachings as they were then, and then the Awakened Heart teachings now. And what he talked about was that, because things were so dense in the way the way they were, the Flower of Life teachings and that Merkaba and those techniques, those were creating a contrived Merkaba body, versus what he teaches now is the awakening the illuminated heart. And that is, in his definition, these are his words, that is the actual organic version of the Merkaba that he was trying to have self-realized back here. Right.
Mm,
So again, nothing's good, bad, right, or wrong. It's all about exploration.
mm.
So when we get to, so the awakened illuminated heart, I did that training way back when, and I think it was, I don't even remember now, 2013 or something like this. I went because a dear friend of mine was going, and I wanted to spend time with her.
Uh-huh.
And they weren't even supposed. They were full and completely. When I was at the door, they're like, "Oh no, it's all full. Don't even bother." And then there was a medicine man that was in the same tradition that I was trained in, and he was a Mesa carrier, and he looked over at me and he's like, "Don't worry about it. Well, you got this. We're both gonna get it," because he was waiting to get into.
Nice.
I'm like, okay, cool. So, an hour goes by, all this stuff, and then finally they're like, okay, you can come in.
Nice. Nice.
So it worked out. But the Awakened Illuminated Heart teachings is strongly based on the unified field within the heart space. There's there's this idea that there is one molecule that is completely unified with all of creation in the center of the heart, the physical beating heart.
Okay, so on medicine one time I was shown that the soul sits there.
Oh, is that right?
That's what I was shown.
Okay.
So I wonder if there's, because what you're describing as the molecule, to me it sounds like the soul. And there's been, I'm sure you've heard this, there's been evidence that when somebody passes, it's like a little over a gram or something leaves the body instantly, and that's like the soul leaving.
Yes, I've heard about this. What you're talking about. There's actually a movie, 8 grams, 8 something. Anyway, where
Yeah,
that's part of the storyline. So here's the thing. Remember, there is no right or wrong.
right.
There is no good or bad.
Uh-huh.
All right. So how can you look at this where those two, you know what I mean? Those two things are not framing up your perspective.
Right.
Okay. So it's a wild adventure, is how I look at it. And there's times when we are going to go through some crap because we need to go through it. We need to decode it. We need to have the experience of figuring it out. Like, we're self-realizing ourselves. Actually, I call it figuring out, but what I really mean is self-realizing yourself in the context of that. So with that work with Drumpalo, you know, a lot of people just, love the system. They love the initiations and they would totally run with it. And for me, it was just, it's like, wow, I learned a lot. There was things that he said that really activated me, but I have no desire to do it any further.
Hmm.
And some people also had that desire, but they weren't as accepting to, instead they looked at it as they are failing again. They're not following through again, and this is the nature of these grids in the 4D field. There's like, if you resonate with any of these disempowerment currents, you're going to have that thought like it's your own. You're going to really believe this is your feeling about yourself.
Right.
It's very intense, but really it's a grid. It's a collective field that you just happen to be a frequency match in that moment because you're having a feeling. And now you're off to the races and thought about how you're not enough in some way.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot that I learned working with him. And then the other thing, I would say the most profound thing that I walked away from in that workshop was that he talked about there being multiple Fibonacci sequences depending on what universe you are unfolding yourself within.
Oh, wow.
And that landed so deeply within me. I was like, I know that's right. I know that's the truth. You know what I mean? It was one of those
Okay.
life-changing, it was really a life-changing revelation. And this is how it works for me. I'm just, going along and I'll hear something. And when it stops me in my tracks, my mind won't understand it, but I can feel it in my
Right.
body. I can
Yeah.
feel something. And I'm like, okay, I don't understand it right now, but I'm saying yes to accepting this feeling, this what
Yeah.
register that's happening. And over time, as my energy system, as my body digests that activation or whatever it was, then only then does it start to touch my intellectual field where I can understand it.
Okay. So for the ones that are more intellectual and don't know what the Fibonacci is, it's like if you look at a shell of a snail, the when the snail is born, it's like this tiny little cell, and then it just builds on itself, and it's a sequence of numbers that when they're added together, right? You add
Right.
on,
0 plus 1 is 1, 1 plus 1 is 2, 2
right.
plus 1 is 3, 3 plus, yeah, so 3 plus, it's like that. So it's supposed to be the golden mean. That's the other way you can say it, the golden mean,
Right.
where
And so he's saying that there's a whole nother sequence in these other universes.
more, yes, there's multiple sequences. And he talked about being shown 6, but he knew there were more. That
Okay.
was what he indicated.
So in like in an experience where the frequency is shifting like on DMT or something, right? People probably are able to see those different Fibonacci sequences, or do you think that because it's a totally different universe, we're not able to access that?
This is a great question. This is a really great question. I don't know if I can be succinct with the response. The feeling, all right. The first thing I'm going to say is going to seem absolutely unfathomable and unbelievable, but it's true. We are all our own walking universe,
Mm-hmm.
every single one of us.
Mm-hmm.
So this is one of the other places that I came to was you're familiar with the shape flower of life.
Yeah.
Okay. Within it is the Metatron cube.
Right.
In that is the platonic solids.
Yes.
Okay. Platonic solids are called platonic solids because they were light geometries contemplated by Plato, which is why they call it platonic solids. So each of the major building blocks of reality takes a vibration from that geometric shape. So water, for example, is the pyramid with 3 point base. Okay. Molecules organize themselves in that light geometry. So in very early on, and this is one of the arguments I would have with my friends back then, they were very, very, very into Metatron cube and that geometry and all this stuff. And I'm just like, just not feeling it, you know? And they're like, what do you mean? It's the basis of life.
Mm-hmm.
And they would build the case, right? And it's like, yes, I get that you fully have all the evidence that you need to believe this and rock this as part of your reality. And what I realized is that you're making a choice to rock this particular universal reality and the rules that go along with that universe.
Right.
Okay. And what I discovered way later, I'm talking about decades later, was that I am not to play around in that universe. I have no interest in playing around in that universe because that is not part of my purpose. My purpose is to wake up humans to the truth of who they are, distill the highest truths from the ancient mystery school teachings, and empower them to be the true caretakers of this reality that we're meant to be. That's my purpose. Therefore, the flower that teaching is irrelevant to me and my path. And people might be like, well, it's the foundation of all life. In that universe, it is.
Right.
The universe that I'm dreaming forward isn't in that, doesn't work by those rules. Totally different rules of reality.
Yeah, so I think something like a levitation like you experienced just shatters that, right? It just shatters that concept of what the mind or what collective consciousness believes is possible in this reality, right?
Right. It definitely shatters, the 4D belief systems, especially when you're present with it, because so we naturally are empathic. Humans are naturally empathic. We naturally resonate with our surroundings.
Right.
Okay. We naturally resonate with our surroundings. So when you have a being like that can do levitation, we, as the disciples or the people in the room, we're sympathetically resonating with that. And because of that, it creates the nesting dolls for that to happen. And of course, it blows out of the water all these different belief systems about physics.
And you actually witnessed this, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So this other thing is that, so another immortal master came in, she's a Toltec master, actually came into my sphere and began teaching me. And she said the secret to levitation has everything to do with having absolutely zero resistance to life.
Oh man, that just hit. So that hit really hard. That hit deep. Yeah.
And yeah, she's really profound. She's pretty much, she kicks my ass every time I'm anywhere near her. So I have a funny story about meeting her. So she was doing a gathering in Newark, New Jersey.
hmm
And I was flying in with a friend of mine. we're both adepts and all that stuff. And we're on this plane.
What a place to do a gathering of all places.
Oh yeah. She's well, it was because about what we were there to unravel. We were there to directly confront that paradigm.
Okay. Yeah.
Later on, I realized what was happening, and I was like, "Oh man, if I knew beforehand, I wouldn't have signed up for this." Which is how it goes. This is why I'm blind sometimes because it's better off I don't know.
Right.
Because when I'm in it, I'm full on, right? I don't stop. Anyway, so I'm in my structures of who I think I am and the belief system and my status of this and my this, that, whatever, I'm in all that. And so is my friend. And we're both mothers. We both have children close to the same age. And we fly there, and a storm, an unexpected storm rolls in out of nowhere, this hellacious thunderstorm with cutting winds and all this stuff. And the pilot comes on and he's like, okay, well, the storm came in out of nowhere and we're not able to get redirected. All the other flights were redirected. We were going to land, so, they tell you, put your hands over your head, baby, the whole thing. And I'm like, crap, am I going to like die here? Just
Jeez, that's crazy. Yeah.
yeah. So we fly he starts descending through the storm.
There's
And
some deep spiritual meaning in that too.
oh,
Right? Like the buffalo going into the storm instead of running away from it.
oh, no, I don't know that teaching. Yeah, you can share that with me.
Yeah.
So we're descending into the storm and the crosswinds were crazy. It's like I could actually feel like the plane like twisting a little bit, like,
Mm-hmm.
and then we're coming in for a landing and it's like we're about to touch and then a wind will come and all this stuff. Barely landed. And then once we landed, another gust of wind comes and starts, and it blew the plane. It started to go sideways.
Oh, wow.
Right. So I grew up, my dad was a pilot. And I grew up in that environment, and I'm like, immediately, I'm like, oh my gosh, we're going to barrel roll, explode, and we're dead.
Oh my God.
That's what I'm going through. And it's so funny because instantly, once it was like the realization of I'm going to die right now, once that landed, something inside of me rose up and I went into this altered state, and all I could hear, and I could cry when I say this even now. All I could hear was Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. And it was like just going right through my body. So the plane straightens. and as soon as that, the craziness ended, everybody's we're like so glad to be alive.
Yeah.
And that was the initiation I had to go to prepare to just do work with her.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And this Om Namah Shivaya, this is the part that really struck me later was, the meaning of that mantra is to, destroy my ego, destroy the illusion that I'm buying into. You're calling Shiva to destroy that.
Yeah.
And I was just like, wow. There was a lot happening in that moment, far beyond, So
yeah.
That's
yeah.
That's the story of meeting Elneen.
Well, so what did you guys do when you were in Newark?
Oh, okay. So, well, I spent the first part of it, completely pissed off.
Okay.
Everything pissed me off. People breathing down the hallway made me mad. I was so mad about everything and the slightest little anything. Oh my gosh. So, but that is an indication of my matter. Just came up really fast.
Right.
All the density and all that stuff. And I mean, I knew that. So I wasn't like, having temper tantrums on people, but I was definitely feeling it. I would wake up angry, go to bed, it's like, I don't want to be angry, but I'm so mad.
Yeah.
So the whale beings came in. So it was layer after layer. She would inch in the layers of different energies. So we had whale beings. Eventually the Fae realm showed up, and, things like that started to happen. And she was not sleeping at all the entire time. So she was operating, with no sleep and with just constant intensity. And I don't know, 3/4 of the way through, she said, well, this is the intention of being here. She was working with the group for us to collapse the structures, completely collapse the linear structures of time. So it was really specifically around linear time, which is the 4D construct. So our bodies, so time is a really interesting thing to play with. And what kind of time you keep has a lot to do with how empowered you are inside of your own body with your own rhythms and with nature.
Mm.
So, and I mean, this is what I'm just said was distilled many, many, many years later. I mean, it was a process. So by time we concluded that whole thing, I was on cloud nine. So something that happens with women, I don't know if men get this the same way, but women, especially after childbirth, we get really critical on ourselves. We're a little bit more poofy here, a little bit sag there. You know what I mean? Like really self-critical, super self-critical.
Hmm.
Even when women say they're not, they are. It's like a deep inserted program.
Oh yeah.
And I'm at the hotel and I get out of the shower and I see myself naked in the mirror. And I was blown away because it was the first time that I can remember ever looking in the mirror and not having any critical thoughts whatsoever.
Mm.
And I was like,
Beautiful.
wow, this is what it is to just really accept how I am.
Yeah.
You know,
That's a huge piece.
it was huge. It was huge. Time. I feel like can I say a little bit more about time? Because this
Oh
feels.
yeah, let's get into it.
So we have it was interesting. I was just on a conversation earlier today about this. We have the Gregorian calendar time. There are cultures that have kept their timekeeping ways, like very popular knowing in the West is about the Mayan calendar
Yeah.
and the different nesting dolls of time, the short count, long count, all that. And then you have the Chinese have their own calendar and methodology of keeping time that they haven't completely abandoned. The Jewish traditions also keep their time. I'm trying to remember the name of that. I don't remember. It's not coming to me. So there's all these different time mechanisms, and you might wonder why would a culture? What does it matter how you keep time? When the sun rises, it's Monday, and it sets. What does it
Yeah.
matter? But it does matter because our beingness, all of this drama is unfolding for us to have our beingness in the surroundings. So our beingness, everything is rhythm. Everything is cycles and rhythms. We talk about frequency all the time, right?
Hmm.
Frequencies, both fast, low, whatever. You
Yeah.
know, you mentioned raising, right? Raising frequency.
Yeah.
So frequency rhythm, this is the underpinning of all of our creation is rhythm. So when we are waking up to an alarm, following a clock that is not in resonance with the truth of nature, it is throwing us on a default level off of our natural rhythm.
Right.
Okay. So, for example, we think there's 24 hours in a day. I know this is going to sound crazy, but science has told us there's not 24 hours in a day. In fact, the earth is spinning faster than she ever has before. There's less than 24 hours in a day, and each cycle is getting shorter and shorter and shorter.
Mm.
What does that mean? Eventually, we're going to have to hit a reset because our calendar will be so far off.
Yeah.
Right. And the last reset, this was the conversation I had earlier, was in 1752. That was the last time they had to shave off a bunch of days off of the year to get us back on track with the solstices and
I
equinox.
remember. Yeah.
Okay. So time, keeping time is absolute, like natural time, nature time is absolutely essential for our awakening journey, for our empowerment journey, because that is the true rhythm of our biology, of our biosuit. That's the true rhythm that we're experiencing. All this other stuff are constructs and overlays put on top.
Yeah.
So the new year is not December 31st.
No.
Right? The new year, well, there's different traditions. Some say it's the solstice, the new
Right.
solstice sun, and others say it's the spring equinox, the new equinox sun.
Right.
Either way, it doesn't matter. The fact is, those are celestially rhythmic events.
Yeah, well, I read that if the months were split up into 13 instead of 12, then we would have exactly the right amount of days, I think 28 per month.
Mhm.
And then it would be aligned with the moon more, and it would be then the 13th um astrological sign, the
Ophiuchus,
yeah, would be more prevalent and available because nobody really talks about that. And
right? It
and
doesn't, they don't talk about that because it doesn't fit in the 12 house model, the 12 sign model, of astrology. That
Right.
particular version of astrology was invented 2000 years ago. Before that, astrology was much more organic, was not the same.
Right.
Everything is not a perfect cookie cutter, clean thing.
Yeah, well, it just doesn't even make sense because they're saying we're in a certain sign, but then you look up at the stars and the stars are in a totally different astrological sign. And so there's all these different types of astrology too. And I'm like, okay, but which one is the most, you know, true to what's happening now, you know?
Yeah, so that very desire that you're talking about is still kind of trapped in the good, in the what's right and what's not right. Okay.
Yeah.
But this is an excellent beat to be on, because this whole, you know, I watch the collective what's going on a lot, not because, you know, I want to know where I belong, though, you know, we all have that desire. It's more about to see the patterns unfolding. I'm looking for signs of humanity waking up. I'm
Yeah.
looking for signs for the collective shift. And I feel like we had a major collective shift a couple of years ago because true sky astrology exploded onto the scene, at least in the Western world. All of a sudden, you know, people are like, wait a minute, you mean the Western the tropical zodiac is not really where they are in the sky, like what you're talking about? It's calculated, right? So there's, you know, there's this evolution going on where people want the truth, and this next layer of truth is coming forward, this idea of true sky. So Raylin Siebert, she is our resident astrologer in Light Body. She was an astrologer, or is astrologer, for many decades. I mean, this is her whole life. And she was like, wait a minute, this is something's not right here. And so what happened for her was she had this explosion of awareness and started getting really hungry for learning. And she learned the Vedic process, the Vedic perception, and then true sky, and then have that also integrated with the tropical Western astrology. And what that's happened is that it's opened up her oracling abilities like exponentially, all because she changed the way she was thinking in relationship to this overlay that we call astrology. You know, so when it's time, we wake up to it. It's a process. See, our ego driver is not the one in charge. This is why thinking that you're not enough is ridiculous, because that's not what's actually creating our reality in the first place.
Well, that seems like it's coming from a childhood wound anyways.
Well, sure, you could call it a wound. Yeah, it hurts.
Or like a wound isn't the best word, but something that happened that the parents passed down a program where they didn't feel enough, their kids don't feel enough, it just keeps going, you know.
So when I say you can call it that, I don't mean it as in it's any less true. I mean it that you can see how my perspective is that yes, it can be called that. But you know, so yes, it can be called that. Ancestral, we do a lot of ancestral work. I mean, that's a major influence to our experience. And here's what all right, so these immortal masters come into my world and they teach me things that are just against everything that I think is true. And
just to shake it up a little.
Yes. So I was in Thailand I was on the Holy Land at a shrine with a specific Taoist lineage. And I woke up to some additional immortal masters that were coming in to shake me up, to help me remember. And one of the things that they said was that, well, everybody always enforces that reality is not what I think it is. Every single one always start off with reality is not what you think you are. Even the Sasquatch and the Fae, they start off any teaching with that. Reality is not what you think it is. Okay. And so the Tao teachings were along the lines of, because I was there I was working with breatharians to reprogram, to do dark room. I don't know if you're familiar with the dark room retreats at the breatharians.
Yeah, I heard. I just spoke with someone the other day that they closed some of them down in Thailand.
Oh, okay, maybe. I don't know. I have no. I know that Jazz. I don't think she's doing them anymore. She was the one that I was working with.
Oh, okay.
She's a very, very well-known breatharian all the way from the 70s. Anyway, so I lost where I was. Okay, yes, the Immortal Master teaching. So the Immortal Master teaching, this is what they say. The first humans, if you're lucky and start working when you're a toddler, you will actually be able to shed all of your ancestral inheritance by time you're 40, where you can actually start living the purpose for the reason why you're here.
Mm.
It takes that long. And I'm like, I heard that. I'm like, well, I'm screwed. Right? I mean, I was a teenager and I'm definitely not devout, you know.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I'm dedicated to what moves me, but I was not, doing my qigong every day and all this stuff. That wasn't it. Discipline, because in my mind, I'm daily discipline. Because this
Yeah.
was for a while how the mystery schools were able to survive, was through this concept of discipline. And the masculine teachings are mostly what survived. The feminine medicine, there's very, very few cultures that still have that alive. Some do, but very few. Anyway, and I'm like, so yeah, let's get this straight. So I'm having a reaction, and then once I get over my reaction, I'm able to ask questions. And it's like, does that mean that me right now sitting in this dark room, I am unraveling the issues that I inherited from my parents? I'm doing all of this meditation and deep work and unraveling. And I mean, oh my gosh. And they're like, yeah, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened is that we go through life and we pile on our crap on top of our parents' crap,
Right.
right? We have all kinds of conclusions and beliefs and all the stuff that gets on top. And so once they showed me how I was piling things on in addition to them, then I was like, oh, okay, so this isn't, so this is still going to be impactful. And of course it was, because I that was early in the darkroom experience where I was very disoriented and pissed off, because that's, I don't know. Maybe this is a Russian thing. I mean, are Russians generally just mad about, I don't know.
Well, I've noticed this phase where people move through the anger because it's so societally suppressed. And then when a certain level of healing is done, that it like blasts open, and then that anger has to be transmuted or alchemized, however you want to say it, or not, depending on how much work that person wants to put in and the tools that they have at the time. But it seems as though the majority of the people on the awakening journey go through that chapter.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't mean that like there's something wrong with it. I think it might be a quirk in the lineage.
Well, it is. Yeah, I think it's there's more suppressed anger in the Russian culture. It's not I mean, it's also like when I would visit Russia, I would always be surprised when people wouldn't smile back at me. But
Mm,
it's because they're not they don't they cut through the BS, right? They're like, if you're my friend, I'm loyal. We're ride or die, like they say, right? Or if I don't like you, I'm gonna let you know. You're gonna see it on my face. I'm not gonna be nice to you. But like, I was raised in America, so I don't have that per se. But I've still done a lot of work around that to clear it from my lineage.
oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, lineage work is really profound. It does liberate us. So getting back to the rest of that story.
Yeah.
So that really validated after I got back and I was back home, that really validated this feeling I had, because I felt like, I think I was like 42 by then, and I felt like life just started. Like this whole time I've just been practicing and
Mm.
life is actually starting now,
Hmm.
you know? And I think that so combine that with the feminine teachings. See, this is the thing, the feminine and the masculine teachings need to come together so they both have a place in our reality. If we're predominantly masculine teachings, there's a point in time where things fall a little off, right? You only get so far, and it's because the feminine wisdom needs to come in. And so while I was going with all that, I was also working with my own indigenous teachers were very, very feminine. I mean, most of them are men in the lineage, but they're very feminine practice.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, can you give a couple of examples of some feminine practices?
Oh yeah, sure. And actually you mentioned this, we did touch on one of the pieces earlier, which was, I think before you hit the recording, where we're about learning with fun, you
Ah,
know?
yes.
learning with joy is one of those feminine principles versus discipline and hard work. It's more of a masculine principle in spiritual work. So yeah, actually this is part of why a lot of the Westerners struggle, in my personal opinion, because we are out of balance. We don't have the anchor of our ancestry. So for example, most of us live in our own places. We have kids, they grow up, they move off to their own places rather than the whole family unit being together.
Right. A community.
Right. And that multi-generational thing, because when you're dysfunctional, multi-generational dysfunctions are in your face, right? You're working with it every day, right? Then you can do something about it. You can have those conversations. You can share things with grandma and grandpa, but when you don't see them on Christmas and Easter, it's like, what kind of deep sense of conversation is going to happen there?
Yeah.
Right? Everybody's on their best behavior, and probably, well, my family anyway, drunk. Anyway, so the feminine teachings honor our divinity right from the get-go. It's because we exist. We are bestowed and blessed with everything we need to realize our purpose. So in the masculine traditions, you earn your stripes.
Right.
You earn your warrior status. You earn, right? So that, it has its place. It needs to be there because you need to know what it is to be standing up for yourself in adversity, and, know your strength, how to apply your power. But when it's not backed up by that deep feminine holding and nurturing space, we start to become maybe like a warrior without a cause kind of thing,
Right.
And so for example, in this tradition, how you would get initiated is you would get the initiations before you went into the journey. You were gifted ceremonially with everything you needed before you went and faced that dark night of the soul, whatever that was going to be. So it wasn't that everything's perfect and rosy. It's just, it's getting you in contact with your center and your source, so you can resource from that in your time of greatest need. Okay.
So like basically giving tools before, quote unquote, because the dark night of the soul could come almost at any time for some people, right? So just being raised with tools, right? Did I understand that correctly?
I would say stories, sacred stories
okay.
that inform you in a different way.
Okay.
Okay. Stories are powerful. Actually, that's the secret to transcending the overlays of the 4D field is the narrative. That's why network TV, network news, this is why everybody's under this fog of delusion, because the networks are feeding them narratives that inflame, that overwhelm, I haven't watched TV on that level in a really long time, but I remember shutting the news off at my grandparents' house and being like, oh my God, overwhelmed with how awful everything is.
Right.
And that also creates a condition inside of us where there's this perverse pleasure in the kind of suffering, like misery loves company. You've heard this, like people just are addicted to the drama. So we become addicts to these stories that rob us of our own divinity, that rob us from our own sacredness. We become addicted to those stories.
Yeah.
And this is what we're working through on a collective level, individually and collectively, is sorting out what's the real truth here, what's my truth here. So transmissions are really effective for this kind of work because a lot of times we get stuck in the intellectual loop, the thoughts and mind thoughts. What's interesting about mind thoughts is that it's all a set pattern. You're in your deep knowing, your deeper part of your being. That's not a set pattern. That's an infinite well. So you can resource yourself in such a way where you can accept something as being true. You can feel into a reality, even though you don't have words or thoughts that can explain it to yourself. See, most people, especially Westerners, we want to understand before we take the leap. And the fact is, it's never going to happen that way. And if you do understand before you take the leap, it's an illusion.
Yeah, well, I think you're touching on something that I was going to mention, which is surrender, I think is a really huge part of the feminine teachings.
Yeah, you're hitting on something that's been a conversation in our community. So
Okay.
yes and no. Surrender as a principle is essential for the ego driver to do.
Right.
All right. So there's this, and I might be offensive here when I say this, there's this psychobabble about masculine, feminine. This is what a masculine and he's strong, he's a leader, he's this, and the feminine is passive and surrenders and all this stuff. To me, in my vantage point as a multidimensional human, that's a whole nother program of disempowerment for both. And the reason why I say this is because it's all through the psychology lens. And the psychology lens was founded and proliferated by pedophiles and
Mm,
satanic people. I mean, you know what I mean? So there's
yeah.
no way that their perspective is meant to be empowering. It's meant to be intellectual mind candy so someone can enjoy thinking about this and analyzing that and get to this place. They feel like they're getting somewhere, but they're not actually getting anywhere. Their being is not changing. It's the same
Right.
being. They just feel
Right.
smarter and more aware and more informed, but that doesn't change you. So I have to say that about surrender. So surrender for the ego driver is essential.
Yeah.
I tell myself, but the bigger truth in that, the bigger
Yeah.
truth, the more empowering thing in there is acceptance.
Right. And
That's
like
more.
what I meant by surrender was like allowing, just allowing is a better term, like allowing whatever needs to transpire, because the control is the opposite of surrender for me, right? Like where I want to know, I want to hold on as long as I can. And like medicine work, plant medicine in particular, without that surrender, it can spiral downwards really quickly or bring out experiences that are equally as important, and can allow someone to not transmute it in a joyful way versus a more struggling, like to grasp and, you
I,
know.
I want to say something back to you that you said, and and this is the key piece in everything that you said. Surrendering being the opposite of control.
Right.
So what does this tell you? You're in the 40 field. It's
Right.
still the 40 game, right?
Okay.
So but do you remember Richard Hoagland when he was prolific in his whistleblower? Richard Hoagland was late 90s, early 2000s. He's the one that he released the information about the face on Mars where President
Oh,
Clinton.
right. Okay.
Right. So he released the information. President Clinton felt obligated to go and make a national announcement about the face on Mars, and there might be life on Mars because of this face, right? So Hoagland, really interesting character, deep into the disclosure community way later. But something that he said, again, struck me, like stopped me in my tracks, and I know this is true. And this is applied in every layer of the awakening journey as we get out of this 4D field and this concept of good, bad, right, or wrong, because they also bring us to having preferences. This is better than that kind of thing, right?
Ah,
So, so, so this is what he said. And this is in a interview that he did with Carrie Cassidy long time ago. You remember? I don't know. She might still be around on Project Camelot when that was going. And
I think I
I'm
missed
going way
that.
back in time here.
Uh-huh.
Anyway. So what he said, because with the question that he was asked, it's like, well, how can so many people be involved in this level of manipulation conspiracy? Like, how can so many people say yes to this when they know the harm, right? And his response was, the lie is different at every level. So
Mm,
whatever lie you need to hear to convince yourself that you're right, that's what you'll be told.
right. That's deep.
That's so deep. And he
Yeah.
said, I mean, that stopped me in my tracks, man. I was like, what? That's real. I know that's real, what he's saying. And it shows itself over and over again. Even now, as awake as we're a community of multidimensionally awakening and empowered sovereign people, but still we find always a big truth that has a thread of a lie in it. like this thread. And how you catch it is not intellectually. The mind cannot catch these things. You can catch it in your body. You can catch it in the feeling senses, the felt sense, if you will. That is how you can catch the things that are just a little off.
Yes.
Yeah. So beings that come to you, they come to you really bright and radiant. They may not be bright and radiant. They can have an agenda, which most, I hate to say it that way, but most do.
Mm-hmm.
How do you catch it when they're so radiant and bright?
Right.
Right? You're telling you all these things that you like to hear. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So in my experience, the ones, and this is really, you know, the Sasquatch are very, very good at this. Everything they have done with me was to wake me up to myself. So their question when I ask things or get guidance, they always come back to me. Well, who are you? Who are you?
Mm-hmm.
And they keep. It's like I'll come in with a presumption of how I think reality is,
Right.
and they'll push it back on me and ask, "Who are you?"
So what do you say? And what
Well,
is
so
the
it's all
response?
about beingness. I'm sorry, say that last part.
In response, what do you say to who are you?
Right. So when I'm centered in my being, I know the response. If I'm
Mm.
not centered in my being, I'm like, oh crap. I don't really know what to tell you right now. Right. So this is the other idea that we have that's false, is that once we awaken to something, now we're always going to be awake. No. We are in zones. We're an ocean of energy. And some parts of the ocean have those nesting dolls set in just the way where we can be in ourselves very easily and in our flow state and all this stuff. In other nesting dolls, it's a lot harder, if not impossible, in that moment anyway.
Yeah.
Right. So this is something else that we're hard on ourselves about. It's like your environment really has a huge impact on your being. Huge. And I mean, we hold ourselves to the idea of that master, that master in, was that Beijing Square, the one that can, hold they have big, did you ever see those videos where a pickup truck, his wheels are spinning, the accelerator's floored, and there's
Yeah.
this little old man holding it in place with his finger, right? We compare ourselves to that kind of thing. It's like, no, that is, number one, that's not a fair comparison. That part of why he's doing that is part of his purpose, right? To wake people up out of whatever your purpose is the compass. Whatever is in alignment with your purpose, this is the stuff that's going to really rock you and give you your jam. And it's not going to be the same as the other person. So we're not going to be like a master like that ever. Are we still in our purpose? Absolutely.
Mm.
Those masters achieve that in solitary confinement in the mountains. The guru in the mountain, right? That's an archetype that we all know about. The sacred, like Gandalf, living off in the high mountains, right? That is an archetype. That is true. But we're not here to be isolated in the mountain. We're here to be in connection with each other. We're here to sing together and cook together and make life together and vision together. It's like, that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
So, but yet in the back of our minds, we hold that standard in our heads to show us why we're not enough, or why we're falling short, or what's wrong with us, or I can't do this because of, my mom didn't carry me enough when I was a kid, whatever the story is, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
The understanding is that in the feminine medicine, that you have everything that you need right now to get started. Everything is right here, right now, with you in the room, inside yourself. Make that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the most important question that keeps trying to come through is like, okay, so you said the example of surrender and control being opposites, that's 4D, right? So how, from my viewpoint right now, and I'm trying to stay open to all of it and constantly refine, right? So from my viewpoint right now, everything is frequency. And frequency, you said something earlier that made me think as well. Frequency isn't just up and down, it's also side to side and whichever other ways, right? It can be a torus. But when I think of frequency, I think of raising and lowering. like spiraling up or spiraling down. Like that's the way that I've expressed it before, even on the podcast, right? And so in these examples of these being opposites, right? Like in the example of surrender and control, when they're opposites, wouldn't they still be on the same spectrum of everything and exist as just a shade of white, gray to black, right?
Two sides of the same coin. Mhm.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And so I guess the deeper question is like seeing things as okay, we have the flat earth and we have the spherical earth, we have the surrender and the control, we have the black and the white, and it's all one. Where, how is that? It's the concept of oneness, right? It's the concept of it's all connected, it's all one, it's all part of a web. Are you hearing the question that I'm trying to say through what I'm expressing?
Yeah, I feel like I understand why it's difficult to articulate
Yeah.
because, all right, so I'm going to go back to the nesting doll example. Okay. What's really, when you're navigating the unseen realms, it's really important to know where you are.
Hmm.
Okay. Most people don't know where they are. And most people, when they go way out of bounds, they can't remember where they are or where they came from in the first place. This is part of the disempowerment stuff that humanity's gone through, getting disconnected from our lineages and all this stuff and the sacredness. So, are you familiar with the Manhattan Project?
Hmm.
Okay. So this is where our people in our Navy got technology. This is really for the listeners that wouldn't know. Got technology from what is claimed to be the Zeta Reticuli, and it was cloaking technology, and they were doing their first experiment to cloak a battleship.
Yeah.
And it was success and it went terribly wrong at the same time. It was both. It's like they got the ship cloaked and all that stuff, but when they came back from the cloaking, the crew were infused into the body of the hull.
Yes.
Okay. And this is because multidimensionally, they did not know who they are. They did not have their
Mm.
center. The ones that did have their center, and they don't know it intellectually, they know it in their being, they were not infused in the hull. They were just, they were on the deck or wherever, and they survived. There
Mm.
weren't many that survived, right?
Right.
So this interdimensional technology, our sovereignty is really important to have because it's all upon us right now. It's all coming forward more and more. So the bar is being raised, like, trial by fire kind of thing. So going back to knowing where you are, especially in plant medicine ceremonies, this is actually really important. Knowing what the 4D field looks like, the polarity field, knowing what it feels like is essential because then you know what kinds of delusions you're dealing with versus the next nesting doll out is the soul's journey, which is where a lot of people want to get with their medicine. They want to see what's in the soul's journey so they can bring healing and forgiveness and soul retrieval, whatever.
Right.
And then there's a nesting doll outside of that, which is the nesting doll of the light body, which is the map of the geometry. It's the frequencies create shape. So that's another nesting doll, that threshold where the frequencies start to create a form, like the platonic solids, right?
Mhm.
And then you have frequency itself, which is the seventh dimensional realm. That has a whole nother set of rules. Each nesting doll has its own rules. Okay, so the question changes every time. And then outside of that is the oneness, the all that is, the I am that I am. So here's why it's important. If you're dealing with something in the 4D field or in the 5D field, and you're trying to make that field wrong or something, you're trying to dismiss something as being so because we're all one from the outer nesting doll, from the rule of the outer nesting doll of the eighth dimension, and you're trying to apply that in a nesting doll that doesn't play by those rules, you're not going to make any change
Mhm.
because it's not an either or thing. It's an and,
Right.
right? So this is changing the way we think,
Mhm.
that polarity brain, changing the idea of right, left. And, there's this there's this deep integration our biosuit is capable of, so we can have command of our awarenesses and have it all in the here and now, liberating our beingness in the
Mm-hmm.
moment. Now, once that's in place and in a collective level, it doesn't matter about the straw man system. It doesn't matter about the ET agendas. It doesn't matter about the sorcery, blah, 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 blah. None of that matters, because we are the sword of truth, let's say, that's connected from the deepest core of our being into the oneness of all that is and beyond.
Mm-hmm.
We know where we are.
Right.
And and you're not manipulatable after that. After that, it's like, it's about what you want. And this is where a lot of people hang up. This is why the ancestor stuff has got to get cleaned up. Because if you don't know what you want, you're pissing in the wind. You know what I mean? So you got to
Okay.
know what you want. Do you dare know what you want? Most people have no idea what they want. They know what other people say is a good idea to want, but they don't
Right.
know what their heart wants. And that is where a lot of us are at right now, that are waking up. A lot of us are woken up to these levels and don't realize it, and are functioning, right? So this knowing what you want is essential. What do you want?
Okay. Okay. So the a lot of people say there's a cord, like a silver or gold cord, that
Mm-hmm.
when you go on plant medicine, when you go into these other dimensions and things like that, it'll bring you back, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you say know where you are you
Mm-hmm.
talking about this physical body, or are you talking about your soul? Are you talking about like 0 point, where like the centered energy feels like, where I know what my energy feels like versus other people's or other beings' interferences? Could you clarify that?
Mm-hmm. So it's kind of yes to all the above. So it depends on what's happening. So you're in your ceremony, and the spirit is bringing you something really dark, right? And you
Right.
have all kinds of thoughts and feelings and narratives about that darkness. Now, are you approaching that as in that darkness is something that needs fixed? Does it need healed? Are you approaching it as in, I am being shown something and I'm going to stay in touch with myself while I'm being shown it?
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference. When you don't know where you are, you're afraid, you feel powerless, right? You don't know what's going on. You're the right and the wrong is really strong. Like, this is good and that's bad,
Right.
right? We have a strong aversion versus strong favor. That's all the 4D field dynamic. This is why it's important, because once you realize, oh, I'm seeing all this is all happening in the collective field. My parents were deeply connected into that collective field. I feel different than that. So I can witness this darkness and feel what's happening inside of me and not need to fix anything.
Mm.
Witness and watch.
Be the
So
observer, right?
yes, be the observer. But here's the thing: witnessing, observing. I know these words kind of have a connotation already. When you are in your axis, the truth of who you are, and these are transmissions that we give a lot, especially, in our work with the dream work and light body, is these transmissions, they come in, they'll heal an aspect that's fractured, or they'll actually plant in the field, in your field, and start to grow a garden. So it depends on where you're at in the journey of that. But once that transmission plants, you have the capacity where just your awareness, just something coming into your awareness, starts the liberation process. You don't need
Right.
to do anything but be willing to be aware. And a lot of people think awareness means what they think about it, knowing what they think. It has nothing to do with what you think. It
No.
all has to do, can you be in your heartbeat? And this is what I use, the heartbeat as a big cue. Can you be in touch with your heartbeat and your centered self and witness this at the same time?
Mm. Mm.
That's the alchemical secret right there.
Right.
Easier said than done, but that's it right there.
Yeah, I had an experience, several years ago, where I realized that the awareness is 95% of it, because then it might come around once again. I'm aware of it. I'll address it, and then usually it's like 2 or 3 times max, and then with that awareness it starts to shift, like you said.
Yeah, yeah. And the integration, I mean, these biosuits are absolutely extraordinary.
Oh yeah.
Extraordinary. And so there's also these teachings that we're trapped in a body. No, 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 no. There's no trap happening in these bodies. When they're activated, and it is vast, liberating freedom to be able to express and have yourself within the biosuit. It's like a walking miracle,
Hmm.
like everything, every step, every moment. Now, this is a state of being that I'm talking about, but this is the truth. This is how we're meant to reclaim this reality, is reclaiming the biosuit. So one of the other things that we do is we unravel blind spots. This is a really important part of the process. And once the body releases the blind spot, and that could be because of trauma or whatever, it's no longer there. And you can finally see what's been sitting right in front of you most of your life.
Hmm.
And it's like, how can that be so? I mean, I walked by this every day and didn't notice. And now I have this unraveling and I come out and now I notice. How is that possible? That's just how blind we are. That's how powerful the 4D field is.
Yeah.
Yeah. We used to do these activations with Barbara Handclout. So I lived in Ohio, right? And right next door to that is Lilydale, New York, which is a community of psychic mediums. So
Hmm.
Lilydale was founded in the Victorian era. So it's been a community of psychic mediums for many, many, many generations. And she would do activations there. And we would have to have healers stand at the back of the room because the 4D field was so potent, people would lose their consciousness just by talking about the higher dimensional frequencies,
Oh
just
wow.
bringing them into the room. People would fall out of their chairs. People would have fits of rage that come out of nowhere. I remember I was so consumed with, I might have left my coffee pot on at the house back in Ohio. I'm like, oh my God, it's going to explode and it's going to this. And she's like, hey, you get in the back.
Uh-huh.
And then they were using polarity therapy. So they would pull the density out and I was back. I was present again and I can be aware and I would sit down and I'd feel fine.
I've never heard of polarity therapy.
Oh, it's an old school practice. Polarity therapy is, you have a negative, positive, and you create a current, and that current just pushes things through, flows through.
Okay. How do they create a current?
Intention. It's kind of like
Oh,
Reiki.
okay, got
It
it.
looks like Reiki, but it's different.
Okay. Okay. Beautiful. Well, Christina, you just launched a new booklet, right?
I did. I did.
Yeah.
It's called Rise of the Multidimensional Human.
Nice.
And this is a volume one. There's many more volumes to come.
Okay.
And I was inspired to do this because for many years I had this podcast called Lunchtime Chats, and there were downloads constantly coming from that. And we're coming, collective is coming to a precipice. And my guidance is like, people really need to have their pain points, like really put your finger on it and just give your download like you do, because
Yeah.
I kind of just say it like it is. I mean, I'm kind of blunt. I don't know if that's it. Anyway, so what I did was I compiled the transmissions from those years that address this very specific pain points that people are having today
Mm,
in their awakening journey, in their spiritual journey.
mhm.
The lie is different in every level. And, sometimes, the 4D field is a lot more fluid than it used to be. So you can just pinpoint it, put your finger on it, have a feeling about it, and you can waken up out of it. Right. So
Mm,
that's what this volume is all about. It's just getting to those points, understanding you're a sacred being. And this is why things are this is why your practice has failed you for so long, or
mm.
not doesn't, or stopped working altogether, which is a huge problem in a lot of people that have been in traditions for a while. It's like it stops working, or they all of a sudden can't stand it anymore, and they've dedicated most of their life to it. So those kinds of things are all addressed in that book, Rise of the Multidimensional Human, Volume 1.
Amazing. And that's a free booklet that can be downloaded on your website, right?
Yes. So I just gave the copy over to my back office gal, and the landing page will be available soon. But if you get on our mailing list, just go to lightbodyacademy.com and get on the mailing list. You'll get a notification when you can download that book, which will be in the next week or so, I'm sure.
And with the Light Body Academy, you have live events as well as online courses, right? Different things.
Right. Yeah, so it's a membership. So community is huge. Doing things by yourself doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
You know, it's very limited. And so we are a cohesive community. So it's a membership that you get involved with. The first tier of that is all about building a strong, clear energy field and stepping into your sovereignty. And then after that, it's dream work. We do a lot of collective dreaming kind of stuff. And then we also have these little one-off courses just to, you know, just to play and get to something that's important to you in a direct way, right? So we have Laurel does the real world of fairies, photographing the unseen realms.
Oh,
And
amazing.
yeah, so she gives you the whole download, what to do about your energy field and all this stuff to connect with the fae so you can get pictures of them.
Mm.
Really, really awesome little course there. And then Stacey Hernandez, who does our death rites and our ancestor stuff, she also is, you can sign up for that and just work directly with your parents, your mom and your dad, and the stuff that maybe is in the way of you stepping into the truth of who you are from the ancestral piece. So we have really something for anybody according to what kind of commitment you want to make. You know, some people are like, hell yeah, I want a community. And other people, just dip a little toe in,
Uh-huh.
come back to your life. And that's fine too. Everything's good. We're here to serve. We're
Mhm.
here to serve humanity, to serve life, and to unite the realms. And that's our intention, number one, foremost. So if you feel called to that, anybody feels called to that, I encourage everybody to check out lightbodyacademy.com.
Yeah, amazing. .org.
.com.
Okay. Okay, cool. So we'll drop all these links in the description for everyone. Thank you so much, Christina. This was an amazing, amazing experience for me. I learned a lot. I feel like I got so many downloads and insights, and I know I sense that a lot of the listeners did as well. So I like I felt in the beginning, I would love to invite you back on for a part two, and
Mhm.
then we can continue our conversation. So thank you again.
Yes, thank you.
Until the next one.
Yes, until next time. I would love to talk about ET agenda, go deep into
Yeah.
that. That
Yeah.
is
I mean,
very
we have a huge list of other stuff we didn't get to. So,
love to come back and talk about
yeah.
it.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Christina. Until next time.
Until next time.
Take care.